Hey everyone, I want to first thank you for joining me today as we're going to be going through how to determine your exit strategy, meaning what are we going to do with the property after we bought it? Now, we should know this going into the deal, but I also want you to realize that things do change. We could possibly change our exit strategy during that process. So today I'm going to walk you through this entire process, how we look at exit strategies, how we look at deals, and what are the possibilities of even getting rid of it? And of course, how do we actually make money with each exit strategy? Also going to teach you how to evaluate each possible way and which way may be more profitable for you. I know when I got started, I only worked one strategy, and that was wholesaling. And being a wholesaler, there's really only one exit strategy, and that's to wholesale it out to another investor that's going to buy it, fix it up, and so forth. So as my business started to grow, I also realized that, hey, I'm missing out on a ton of opportunities out there and helping a lot of more people just by simply understanding these different real estate strategies, or what we call exit strategies. It's all going to be the same thing. If I do this, I can use this strategy to acquire it. I may use that same strategy or a different strategy to actually get rid of it. And that's what we call an exit strategy. So this is definitely going to open up your eyes to a lot of different ways on how we can utilize these strategies from not just the acquiring side, but again, the exit strategy. So with that being said, let's get going. So the first thing that I wanted to do was, let's use an example here. Let's look at the possibilities just by using a basic example. And I want to just keep it simple at this point, just so you can get the idea of where we're going with this. So let's say that we found a property. The after repaired value was $200,000. Let's say it needed $20,000 in repairs, and this could just be minor updates and so forth. Let's not necessarily worry about the details of that. The rent value is $1,500. Now, these three numbers are really going to help me determine what I can do, what I can't do, and so forth. Now, ultimately, it really comes down to the seller situation on what they're willing to do. And what you're going to learn is that what really moved our business forward from just doing, my first year, heck, I did 46 deals. But we realized that, hey, that's only working one strategy. How do we create multiple offers? How do we have multiple offers to acquire, which then in turn gave us multiple ways to get rid of it, which would be our exit strategy. So I want to use this as an example and actually walk through these different ways on how we can actually get rid of it. So I want to start off with, how do you profit? How do we, if we got a house under contract, or if we bought a property, what could we actually do with it? So let's just assume for a second that you bought a house, and this would just be conventional. You bought a house, the deed's in your name, just a very traditional way of buying the house. What could you do with it after you bought it? And that's what our exit strategies are all about. So the first thing a lot of people would say, hey, I could sell it. Maybe you possibly fix it up, put it in a retail shape, turn around and sell it. A lot of you would say, hey, I would rent it out. Some of you might say a lease option or seller finance. So when you buy the house and you have the deed, you can ultimately do these things. Obviously, you could move in it, right? But I want to just focus on the investing side, how we actually make money. Some people may say, hey, you could sell the note. Well, that's a seller finance strategy. Really, real estate comes down to just a very few strategies. Now, there are multiple ways of doing a couple of these strategies. Heck, there's over 30 ways to sell or finance a house. There's 2 ways to do a lease option. So there's multiple ways in each one of these, but I want to keep it real simple. Really, this is it. I think a lot of people, they get so uptight and looking at, well, there's got to be more strategies out there. No, if you just focus simply on, what I call the 5 real estate strategies. There's one that I'm going to leave out here, which is a straight option for this presentation. But if you just focus on these particular strategies, you're going to do fine. Now, I get it. A lot of you that are getting started, maybe you only working one strategy. At the end of the day, you want to build off of that one strategy and eventually have all the tools in the toolbox. We want to basically put you in a position that no matter what situation you run across from a seller point of view, you're going to have a solution for it. Doesn't mean that they're always going to take your solution, but at least you would have multiple solutions for that. All right, so here are the 5 actual strategies. So we have wholesaling, or what some people call assignments. A lot of you guys are working this strategy, or what I call the retailing, which is the fix and flip, the lease option, rent to own, lease purchase, seller finance, and then straight option. If you're a realtor, you would then list the property. That's the one strategy, if you're a licensed agent, that I would recommend you not do. In turn, you would actually list the property. So I really want you guys to focus on these particular 5 strategies, because think about it. These are also our exit strategies too. So it's not just a way of how do I buy a house? It's how do you get rid of it? That's the one thing that not many people, I think, actually teach out there is, you'll spend thousands of dollars just to try to find out how to buy the house. And yet they fail to teach you what you just spent thousands of dollars on how to get rid of it. So that's what we want to focus on today, is how to get rid of these properties. So let's look at it from the first point of view, and then I'm going to go back and explain these different ways. If we look at a cash discount offer, meaning that it's at a very good discount, maybe based on that it's a distressed property, that's a very highly motivated situation, we could cash offer at 115. Now, all of these numbers, I simply just go into REI Pro, which I'm going to show you, and just simply go through the all cash offer. Our all cash offer is what you can pay the seller. It has nothing to do with anything else but what you can actually pay the seller. So I went in and just plugged in the ARV and calculated this payment, or this offer. So the percentage of ARV is 57.8. I always have like a general rule of thumb with any kind of distressed properties. I generally like to keep it under 65%. Now, in turn, really these percentages don't mean anything. I just want to look at, hey, here's what it's worth. Here's what it's going to cost me to buy it and sell it. And here's my potential profit. That's the number. I like to just keep it simple. I see a lot of crazy formulas out there. Take 50% of the ARV, then subtract 10,000, and then add back 2, and all these crazy nonsense formulas out there. This is straight math, which I'm going to share with you in our all cash offer formula. I put in there a wholesaler fee at $6,000. Again, this could vary, which is 3% of the ARV. Again, depending on what kind of deal you can get. And you're probably going to know that when you qualify the seller on what they're looking for, what would they really want out of the property, how much cash do they need, time frame, and so forth. You'll understand that before you actually make the offer. I'm just using $6,000 in this particular example. So if you acquired it at a cash discount and you're thinking wholesaling, then what are your exit strategies? Well, there's basically one, and that's to wholesale a deal to someone else. So you're getting it at a wholesale price, and then you're going to wholesale it just for a little bit more, in this case, $6,000 more than what you actually have it under contract. In turn, the investor would buy it for $6,000 more, and you would profit that $6,000. So if you did 10 deals a year, that would be 60 grand. So a lot of you are probably saying, well, that's not too bad. I mean, I would take that, especially a lot of you maybe part-time. I mean, heck, I said, man, if I made 100 grand when I got started, I'd be rich. I'll take vacations and all this stuff. And then when you make, 100,000, we got to make more money. So in this case, there's only one way to get rid of it when you wholesale, and that's going to wholesale it back out. So let's look at a different point of view and still go along with this discount cash offer. The only difference in this particular example is that I eliminated the wholesaler. So let's say that you found the property and there's no middleman that's orchestrating the deal for you, that you are the retailer. So your goal is to buy the property. So you're going to obviously need financing. You need some type of, you either need cash or financing, private investor, something like that to actually acquire the property. So you're buying it. And then once you buy it, what could we do with that property? And we just talked about it. You could purchase it, fix it up, resell. You could rent it out. You could lease option the property. You could sell or finance the property. You could sell or finance the property as is and not put any money into it. You could fix it up and sell or finance it. So there's a lot of different options that you have with these strategies when you're looking at it from a retail point of view. So we're going to use the retailing strategy to acquire it. And then obviously you have a lot of exit strategies to get rid of it. Obviously there's more risk because you have to buy the house. It's going in your name. But at the same time, there's potentially more profit and you have multiple ways on how to get rid of it. And I also want you to think about, if I acquire a property, you obviously want to have as many exit strategies as there are, because what happens if one fails? So you want to have multiple strategies, and obviously retailing does that for you. If you did 10 deals a year in this particular example, you would make $300,000. All right, so let's look at it from a different way of acquiring the property, and that would be a lease option. Okay, so if the sales price was $170, keep in mind ARV is 200, and I know people are saying, where did you come up with 170? Well, let me just share, 200,000 minus the 20,000 in repairs, and then 10,000 as a discount. Let's offer 170. Could you offer less? Sure. Could you pay a little bit more? Possibly. So lease options is not something that you just you just have to offer the number. It's not a mathematical equation that comes up with the sales price for lease options. Down payment I put as $2,000. Remember, the monthly rental rate on this property was $1,500. So I'm going to offer $1,200, which is $300 less than the going rental rate. So if I decide to stay in the middle, then obviously I would profit through the monthly payment. But do you have to stay in the middle? No. Let's say the seller's mortgage payment was $1,500 and you knew you couldn't rent it out for more. Well, there may not be a good reason for you to stay in the middle if you're not going to profit each month. Maybe that's the case where you just finally get the seller, put the buyer with the seller, collect the difference in down payment, and move on. Again, we want to go as long-term as possible with the seller. Go as long as you want with the seller. It's when we do a deal with the new buyers where I want to keep it down to a year. So we offered 3 years. Now, here's the key. If you put a house under contract for a lease option, what can you do with it? How do we actually get rid of it? And I know a lot of you are just saying, well, you just lease option it back out. Well, that's true, but you also could rent it out. Maybe you just eventually want to buy the house or maybe move into it in a few years. You could technically rent the house out, but you're acquiring it now, and you could technically sell it. Now, at these numbers, it would probably be a little bit difficult to actually sell it with the amount of repairs that you're trying to sell to a qualified buyer, but it is an option. Again, this would go back to your original offer and how much profit there would be. If you actually structured this with the seller, it would look like this. So sales price $170, $2,000 down, $1,200 a month on a term of 3 years. And let me give you an idea of how you could structure this deal with the new buyer. So that would be 170 minus 2 is 168. So with the new buyer, sales price we put is 190. Now I know a lot of you would say, well, Chris, if it's worth 200 and it needs 20,000 in repairs, how in the world could you sell it at 190? What I want you to keep in mind is what kind of buyer we're selling it to. So this is a buyer that can't get qualified right now. Okay, if you want to buy it right now, then we would go less. But if I'm going to sell it on terms, which is a future price, not a today price as is, then I'm going to increase that and keep. I also know that my buyers are going to improve the value of the property. We look at 20,000, but that could just be an outdated kitchen or the carpet needs to be replaced. So when buyers actually get into these properties, our goal is for them to take ownership of it and improve the value. They want this color on the wall. They want this vanity in the bathroom. They're going to do that for us. Down payment of $8,000. Again, there's no mathematical equation. I always like to try to keep it between 3 to 5% down, which is typically less than a conventional loan, which is even better. Monthly payment is $1,500 because that is what the going rental rate is. And then we're going to do a term of 1 year. So we always want to keep the term with the buyer. It could be less than a year too, but really try to keep this no more than a year. Now, if they can't purchase after the year, you could always extend it. You could always find a new buyer. There's a lot of different exit strategies with the exit strategy with lease options. So sales price for that buyer would be $190 minus the $8 that they're going to put down, which is applied to the purchase price. At the end of that term, they would owe $182. As you can see with the seller, we owe $168. So how do we actually profit from this? So we're going to profit today, as soon as we put the two together, $6,000. That would be the difference in down payment. So the monthly payment difference was $300 times 12 months, $3,600. And then you have the sales price difference. So when my new buyer buys, we would make that difference at closing $14,000. That would be total profit of $23,600. If you did 10 of those deals a year, not too bad. So that's kind of what I love about real estate, is that when you have the knowledge on how to put these pieces together, not just from the acquiring side, but how we actually get rid of them, you can do very well in this business. And I know a lot of you are like, 10 deals, that's it? It just takes 10 deals. But for most of you, it's how do you do your first deal, right? We got to get that first deal done, and then we can move on. So this is just one way of doing the business. Now let's look at seller financing. Handled a little bit different. Remember, seller financing is going to be, you're going to own the house just as much as if you bought it through Bank of America, you're going to have the deed. That's what seller financing is all about. There are seller financing strategies out there called contract for deeds and stuff like that. We don't really apply those strategies anymore in seller finance. Anytime I seller finance a property, I want the deed. I want the ownership of it. And that's just how we do it. So sales price is $150. Now, some of you may say, well, that's kind of low. I highly doubt a seller would take that. But when you add in all the interest, and keep in mind, if you own it, there's no repairs, no maintenance costs, stuff like that. This may be well worth it. A lot of people out there they love that income, but they just don't want to worry about it. They don't want to be a landlord. They don't want to have the headaches. And that's where seller finance comes in. And this is just one way of acquiring it. We're talking about several different ways. Down payment is $5,000. I always give more down since they're giving me the deed. I typically give more down. Now, could you go zero down? Sure. But generally speaking, I'm going to offer more down than if it were a lease option. Interest rate, always like to start low, because that leaves us room for negotiation. Monthly principal interest payment only would be $692. And again, I'm calculating these numbers inside of REI Pro, which I'm going to share with you. So forget about taxes and insurance, because whatever we're paying taxes and insurance with the seller, the new buyer is going to be paying just about that exact same amount, especially the taxes. So that to me is going to be a wash. So let's not focus on taxes and insurance and all this stuff. Let's just focus on the basics here. Term of 5 years, always like to go as long as possible. I just put 5 years here, meaning that we're going to amortize the loan over 30 years to give us a lower monthly payment, which would be $692. But at the end of 5 years, or what we call balloon payment, we would then find out and determine what the balance is, and then we would have to get financing or cash the seller out. So they're out of the deal. So again, you want to go as long as possible. Can you seller finance something for 6 months? Sure. I mean, think about, those of you that may not have a lot of money to get started, you could actually, instead of wholesaling the property, you could find a distressed property, make payments to the seller for a short period of time to allow you to fix it up and then put it back on the market and resell, which would then cash everybody out. What that would ultimately save you is that large 20% down, all those hard money lending fees, and all those other costs associated with just traditionally buying a property with a lender. So this ultimately could be a very awesome way to acquire the deal and not be as expensive for you up front. So if we did seller finance a house, meaning that you're going to have the deed, what could we do with it? You could lease option it, you could rent it, you could sell it, and you could also seller finance it back out. Just like retailing, where we actually get the deed, is going to give you the most exit strategies. Same thing with seller finance. So let's actually look at structuring a deal here. So this is how it looked for you. 150, 5 down, 4% interest, 692 monthly payments for 5 years. We're gonna make those payments for 5 years. Balance after 5 years, and this again, amortized, we're just going 60 months here. I would then need to get financing to cash the seller out. Now, you could obviously get financing, but you're probably going to turn around, and I'm just going to use seller finance as your exit strategy. We could sell this again for 190. I think we keep the price because we're selling it on terms. We're not selling it to a qualified buyer. Otherwise, they would have already cashed us out. So we're selling it to someone that needs time. Down payment of 15. Again, you know, people ask, how much you ask down? You know, how much you got? You know, obviously you want a big commitment from the buyer in case something does go wrong. You always just got to have that security blanket there. I'm going to move that interest up to 6%. Monthly payment puts it at $10.49. We'll do this for 3 years, which again, you could do it for 1 year, 2 years. You just can't do it longer than 5 years because that's how much time you have with the seller. Okay, so after 3 years, their balance would be 168. And again, this would be 190 minus 15 and then amortized. The balance after 36 months would be this particular balance. Now, if we go 3 years and the new buyer buys us out, cashes us out, we then have to close with the seller. So no matter what time frame that is within those 3 years, we have to cash the seller out. So investor profit here, first profit center is going to be the difference in down payment, which would be 10 grand. Monthly payment difference, there was 357 times, again, 3 years, 12,852. And then the sales price difference, 31,000. So you would owe the seller 137. The new buyer would owe you 168. Now keep in mind that is over a course of 3 years. 53,000 divided by 3 years. It's 18,000 here if you want to put it in perspective of years. So 10 of these deals a year would then bring in 180. Now, the lease option was higher, but there are differences, guys. Think about this. When I sell or finance a house, I don't have to worry about stuff. I don't have to worry about, you know, the light bulbs need to get changed. There's a clogged toilet. I don't really have to worry about it when I sell or finance it because they're going to have the deed. So I got the deed from the seller and then I'm giving it to the new buyer. And again, you don't have to use seller finance as your exit strategy. You could seller finance it and turn around and lease option it. Okay, I'm just using this in this particular example. So what are some of the benefits knowing that? Well, think of the seller here. No repairs or maintenance costs because they don't own it. No management fees to oversee this and have to worry about, you know, things going wrong and, oh, now I've got to talk to this person. I've got to call my handyman in. You don't have to worry about all that. Receive positive cash flow. Again, you're going to make interest on the property. And then if you did sell it on terms, you wouldn't have to pay capital gains tax until obviously the new buyer cashed everybody out. So let's look at it from that seller's profit point of view now. So they made 5,000 down, which is the 5 that we gave them. And of course, I'm not going to give the seller the 5 until I get to 15. That way you don't have to use your money. Monthly payment, 692 times 5 years is another 41,000. So the balance owed after 5 years is 131. But let's look at their total profit. Again, this would be under the assumption they didn't have any existing loans on it, which a lot of people do, you know, don't have loans. 5,000 plus 41 plus 131, they actually received 177 over the course of 3 years versus that original sales price of 150. And again, that's because of the interest on the property. And think about, you know, just from the maintenance point of view, you know, either the house breaks down or it doesn't. But if it did break down within the course of 3 years, that would cost money. In this case, seller doesn't have to worry about that. So it's a very good exit strategy if you don't want to, worry about all the tenant headaches that you generally would get in other exit strategies. And again, I'm not going to go through all the ins and outs of each particular strategy today. Those are things that you can learn in the other training videos. So part one of all this is, and now that we can kind of go back and recap this, is really determining the seller motivation, not from just how we acquire it, but how we acquire it, as you can see, is going to dictate how we can get rid of it. So there's only two strategies, either seller finance or you're going to cash the seller out by you buying it. Those two strategies are the only two that actually give you multiple ways of getting rid of it. Otherwise, you're going to be more limited on how to get rid of it. So really, we need to pre-screen our sellers, and we do this in step 2, which I'm going to show you in REI Pro. And there's a few basic questions that really helps me understand what we can actually do with the property. How can we acquire it? And then in turn, that's going to help me understand how I can get rid of it. Part 2 of that is the seller open to either just a cash discount, or are they open to terms? And really, this is the only 2 ways that we can actually acquire property, because anytime I pay cash for a property, it's going to be at a discount. Otherwise, I'm not going to make money. Why would you ever pay full price for it, right? And the other way to buy that is, can I pay you a down payment, monthly payment, and do this over the course of numerous months or years? So we really need to understand where the seller is in their situation. And trust me, most sellers they just want to get rid of it. But the question is, what happens? What are they going to do with the property if they can't sell it? And that's where they may be open to more terms. Think about tired landlords that are just tired of dealing with tenant headaches, but they love cash flow. That would be terms. So we really need to understand this one part, because understanding this ultimately is going to dictate what strategy we're going to use to acquire it, and then in turn tell us how to get rid of it. So these 3 financing techniques, it's all cash at a discount. We can get on terms, and ideally, if you got both, as in the example that I gave you earlier, as far as if you found a distressed property where you knew they would take a cash discount, could you seller finance it? So not only are you getting a good sales price on it, they're also willing to accept monthly payments for whatever time frame they're willing to do it. Ultimately, that would be the best way. It would cost the least amount of money and potentially be the most profitable. And again, this is what everybody would want, right? So I really want you to understand these 3 different ways, and ultimately is going to tell us how to not only acquire, but to get rid of it. Then we have to pick that strategy, right? Which kind of goes hand in hand with step 2. So let's look at some of the benefits of these particular strategies, and not just for the seller, but for you too. So benefits of wholesaling from the seller point of view is all cash. And what I mean by all cash, I'm not bringing dollar bills to the closing table. What I mean is that we're going to pay the seller in one lump sum. Fast closing, no headaches, it's simple. No commissions to pay unless the seller has a realtor. But generally speaking, I don't use realtors to buy property. I know a lot of investors that do. I just personally don't, so that could save on commissions. No complicated paperwork, gets rid of the problem pretty quickly. Now for you, when you wholesale, it's quick cash, works in every market. Low startup cost, requires no money, no credit, easy to learn. By far the easiest strategy. I think that's why I would say the majority of people that get into real estate investing, this is probably where they would start. This is where I started. But at the same time, also understand times have changed when I started. My coaching students, although this is one of the strategies, I really work with other strategies starting off, because think about it. I mean, the competition is going to be the highest in this particular strategy. And once you sell off the deal, or once you wholesale it, again, you'd be unemployed, right? Until you found another deal. So I like working some of the term strategies just because it's constant. and I get paid every month, regardless if I get out of bed or not. But these are some of the benefits for you as a wholesaler. If you're retailing it where you're going to cash them out, again, it's going to follow the same lines of wholesaling because you're ultimately giving the seller one lump sum. The difference is you're the one retailing it. You're not that third party, where in wholesaling, you actually had basically a bird dog fee to pay. So again, same benefits for the seller. What are the benefits for you? You get bigger checks. Obviously, if you've got to purchase the property, your checks are going to be bigger than a wholesaler. It's also looking at just every business in the world. If you think about, just the normal day in, day out things that you buy, there's usually a wholesaler, and they wholesale it to the retailer, and the retailer, increases or the price by up to 100%, but majority of items are increased by 75%. So you are going to make a little bit more money doing it this way. Now, obviously, you need to understand the rehabbing side, but that's also going to help you build a power team. So you're going to need multiple people wrapped around you in order to get these rehabs done. Build long-term assets, passive income, or you could use it as a quick sale. You could buy a house cheap, fix it up, and hold on to it for years, or you could just sell it and be done with it. Seller finance, quick sale, covers monthly payments, could stop foreclosure. This would be the strategy that we would work, working with any kind of pre-foreclosure situation. No landlord headaches because you're going to have the deed. No maintenance costs because, again, they don't have the deed, and could create passive income for that seller. Some of the benefits for you is up to 4 ways to profit. I share with you 3 ways. The 4th way would be what we call a discount. Don't have time to go into it today, but where we actually go back and get a discount on the price after we've already agreed on one. It's pretty slick, actually. Do it all the time. Works in every market, 30 proven ways, most profitable strategy. When you look at it really from a long-term point of view, if I were to hold on to properties longer with a seller finance strategy, you could make up to 3 times the value. I want you to think about, if you ever calculated your payments on the mortgage you have on your own house, and if you actually lived in it for 30 years, how much would you ultimately would have paid over that course of time? And you'd be shocked if you've never done it before on how much money the bank is actually making off you. You could do the same thing. So most interest is paid up front in a mortgage. So the longer that you go, you can make a lot more money with it. Long or short-term asset could be passive income. Lease option benefits for the seller could be a quick sale as far as relieving them from monthly payments. And generally, that's what people are looking at. That's their motivation is, hey, I can't afford the monthly payment. I'm going to have to rent it. So this is giving them another option. You could work with pre-foreclosures. Don't really recommend or suggest that. I know some people use this particular strategy to do that. I want to have the deed if I'm going to make up the back payments, but could you actually wholesale someone in pre-foreclosure and then the investor then lease options it? Yeah, you could. I mean, you can really be creative with these strategies. No landlord headaches, low maintenance costs, passive income, committed buyer, and I like that. Our buyers that we put in the properties, they're committed to buy. It's not like years ago or what you hear out there is, if you've got 10 grand, they're qualified, you just put them in the house. And next thing you know, you got $20,000 worth of repair costs after they destroyed it, right? We need to qualify these people. We need to make sure they're going to be in a position to eventually buy. So times have changed, and there are investors obviously take advantage of people. But you guys know me, it's just not the way we do it. Your goal is to help people at the end of the day. And if they choose not to buy it, then they choose not to buy it. Okay. But we want to put them and set them up in a position that they could eventually buy this property. Benefits to you. You get paid 3 different ways. Again, It's very similar to seller finance this way, where you get paid the difference in down payment, monthly payment, and then sales price. And one of the big reasons I love this strategy is because you can pay the seller full price, or up to full price. And it's not that we just go and offer full price every single time, but that's a pretty awesome offer if you were to actually pay full price, and you can do that. Easy to explain, controlling real estate instead of actually owning it. No money needed, no credit needed, passive income. So a lot of awesome benefits for all the different strategies. And I never really put this strategy above another. If I had to put one strategy, I would say probably the least profitable at the bottom of the list, it would be wholesaling. But that's where a lot of people start because it's easy to learn. So, keep that in mind. And ultimately, you want to have all these tools in your toolbox. Again, I want you to be able to be in a position that you can help every kind of situation out there. Then I want you to create multiple offers. This is really the key that really took our business to the next level. And it wasn't just, giving the seller one option. It was giving them multiple options. And if you can do that, I mean, it's awesome because number one, it's going to put you in a different platform than every investor out there. When you could say, I can either do this, this, or this, no one's ever really heard that. Usually it's just, here's what I can offer you. Okay, so give multiple offers, and heck, you could have 3 different lease option offers to the same owner. So you just be a little bit creative. If I give you a little bit more down, I'm going to go a little bit lower on the sales price. If I go higher on the sales price, I might give you less down. I might change the monthly payment. Well, if you want, I can go lower on the sales price, but I can close faster. There's so many different ways that you could structure these particular offers, especially with terms offers, either be a lease option or seller finance, that you can ultimately have multiple offers working one strategy versus just giving the seller one option. And I tell you, when you give multiple options, the seller gets so confused on which offer to take, they fail to realize they didn't have to take any of them, right? So your acceptance ratio is going to go up. There's no this, you have to make 100 offers in order to get one deal. That's a bunch of bull crap. It's doing it the right way, creating multiple solutions. And sometimes there's only one solution. I get it. But try to create multiple solutions, and that's going to ultimately do more deals. And when we talk about, I was just using the example of just doing 10 deals in a year. When you start creating multiple solutions and think about, situations are different. So you got to be able to give multiple solutions. Just some tips here. Obviously, to determine the seller motivation. Ultimately, that's the key. Now, lease options or even seller financing it's one of those strategies. It's just smarter, than just renting the property out. So they don't necessarily have to be extremely motivated. They're just uneducated. And that's where you come in and actually educate them on these other options. Cash terms or both. We ultimately have to determine this. And because this determines the number 3 here is the strategy. You don't walk into a deal, and I know a lot of people are taught this way. You don't walk into a deal saying, I'm a wholesaler. I'm going to wholesale your property. You need to go in and say, what is your problem? Here's some ideas on how we can fix that problem. Instead of saying, I wholesale, that's what I do. I want you to be able to have multiple ways of doing that, which then leads into creating multiple offers, which again is really the key and something I want you guys to work towards if you're not doing it. This is, I can tell you, is what changed my business. It is changing my students' businesses, and ultimately it will change your business doing it. But it's a process. We have to understand. We have to learn. Sometimes we need some hand-holding. But at the same time, you can do this. Okay, if I can do it, you can do it. And you've heard that so many other times. All right, what I want to do is get into the software real quick. I want to share with you how we create these multiple offers, how we look at these exit strategies, how we qualify the seller, all these different good things. All right, so now that I'm in the software, I'm just on the property screen. As you can see here, I'm gonna just pick on a property here. This is actual property we own. So the first part, what we talked about, is really understanding the seller motivation. And once we review all the details about the property, the numbers, we can then move to step 2. And where I want you to go is that little tab there. It says phone scripts. So what's going to happen here is, again, you can change that phone script depending on what kind of lead that you have here, which will ultimately change your initial script. Now, some of you that have been doing it for quite some time, you have your own way of doing this, right? You have your own message, how you start a call. You have very specific questions that you'd like to ask. So if you're not experienced, this is really going to work well for you. So as I go through here on some of the owner questions, I'm not going to go through all these, but let me tell you some of the important ones. The number one question I need to ask is, may I ask why you're selling? Ultimately, this is going to tell me what I could possibly do with it. If I hear a seller that says, hey, I'm going through a divorce, that's probably going to lead me to either wholesaling or retailing. Possibly some term strategy, but generally when somebody goes through a divorce, if it goes to court and all that, the judge is going to try to force a sale on it. So usually I'm going to go through wholesaling or retailing strategy in that particular case, versus somebody that says, I've got a job transfer, I need to be there in a few weeks, and if I can't sell it, I'm going to be forced to rent it. Well, that's going to open up the whole terms strategies, which could be a lease option or seller finance. And ultimately, that's what I need to know, right? Yeah, do we need to know bedrooms, baths, square footage? What price are you asking? Yes, you need to understand all of these things. But at the end of the day, they're either open to a cash discount, which is wholesaling or retailing, or terms, which would be seller finance or lease option. And once I know that, I could then present those offers. I can schedule a time to go look at the property, and that's where I'm going to build the relationship, understand their story a little bit more. Seller's not going to tell you everything over the phone, but I promise you, if you just ask a few of these questions, they'll probably tell you more than you think. And another thing is, they will probably talk longer on the phone than you will. So ultimately, I want you to find out, as you go down here, we're trying to give you some pointers. Do you need to be cashed out, or would you accept monthly payments short term? Well, short term is different. The meaning of that is different for everyone. We just want to see if they're open to it. Even if a seller says, no, we need to be cashed out, like 99% of the sellers out there, that doesn't mean that that's the offer they're going to take. Okay, so no matter if I couldn't tell you countless stories where a seller said, no, I need to be cashed out. It was an inherited property. I've got 3 brothers and I just need to get rid of it, where we make multiple offers. So we make a cash offer, seller finance offer, and a lease option offer. And you would be amazed on how many sellers actually take one of the other offers. Okay, so you still need to make multiple offers, give them multiple solutions every time. You do have some additional questions down here, especially if they're open to terms. Well, we can maybe find out some more answers to questions. Now, when we get down here, is there existing financing? You got to feel that question out. Some people don't appreciate that question. Obviously, it helps us determine. It's all on how you say it. So just be cautious with that. It's not something that you have to know, but it would be nice information in case you, especially, when you're making an offer, it would be nice to know about what they owe on it. Obviously, you can go through REI Pro and find out what the original mortgage amount was, all that stuff. And then schedule an appointment. We're really not, if I know they're open to a cash discount or terms, I'm scheduling an appointment. I'm not even asking the rest of the questions. So, building that relationship starts on the phone, but you're really going to build it at the property. They need to see who you are, what kind of person you are. Do they trust you? All these different things. Because if they don't trust you, they're not going to take any of your offers. Any kind of conversation notes you can make here. Now, once we go to the property, what am I going to do? I'm not going to go through step 3 here. I actually want to move to step 4 because we need to make multiple offers. I'm not going to go through the comps on here. That's in another training video. You can go through the comparable sales, but let's really look at this all cash offer because I want you to get this. So here's this property valued at $200,000, and there was $20,000 in repairs. Now the acquisition cost here we put as 3%. This is more or less a national average. So you need to find out what the closing cost would be for a buyer, generally speaking, where you live. I know closing houses in Texas are in the thousands, but living in Georgia now, they're in the hundreds. So it's a big price difference. You need to just find out, what are the closing costs. You can call a local title company or attorney's office and generally find out how much closing costs would be from the buyer's point of view. Holding expenses, again, you can go through all the details here, and instructions are actually right up here. I think a lot of people may miss that. It may not be so obvious, but if you click on this little plus sign, you're going to see exactly how we do this and what each thing means in these particular offers. So 2% of the ARV, closing costs are the costs associated with selling the property, not acquiring it, because a lot of investors, you got to think about there's a cost of buying it, and then there's a cost of the retailer that's going to buy it from you, or if you are the retailer, and when I sell it to a qualified buyer. So you have closing costs doubled in here when you're doing it. Hedge expense, I won't go through, is just general rule of thumb is 10%. You could always increase that or decrease that. Advertising cost, I put a realtor commission, assuming that we would be using a realtor from a retailer point of view. Now, if you're a wholesaler, you're going to use this bar over here, and you're going to adjust that accordingly. Again, every deal is different. You got to feel out the seller motivation. You might try to put in 7,000, end up making 3 when you're a wholesaler, because the retailer is going to negotiate this with you probably. I'm just going to leave that out. And then we have the retailer's potential profit. So even if you're wholesaling, you still need to calculate what the investor I'm going to sell the contract to is potentially going to make, because if you don't, then your offer is going to be too high. So you're going to pay too much for it, and there's no retailer that's going to end up buying it after they calculate all these costs. We go back up to the top, you can hit calculate offer, and you can see it's 121. Now, how do we get 121? It's simple. It's your ARV minus all of these expenses minus your profits. It's a very simple mathematical formula. Now, do I want you to start there? No, I want you to start a little bit lower. So maybe we do, maybe we start off at 115. Okay. Now, when you put the starting offer in is where you can come up here and actually print the offers, and you can do multiple offers, which we've only done a cash offer. You then pull that offer up here. You can either pull it up in a PDF or Word if you want to maybe make some changes to the offer letters. You can also upload your own custom letter right here as well. So keep it very flexible for you guys. So that's our cash offer. Then we move to a lease option offer. And we determined that we were going to offer 170, 2,000 down, 1,200 a month. Forget about this monthly credit. I normally don't teach this in a broad teaching platform, more of on a personal level coaching student, but just forget about monthly credits. We're going to do a 3-year term. And then what we like to do, and you can change this, you can go and change any of these numbers, is we like to have our buyer, which in this case, you would be the buyer making the offer, that we're responsible for all maintenance costs and repairs up to $500 per occurrence. Again, seller still owns the house. They're just leasing it with the option to buy. You could increase that, decrease that, calculate that offer, then go up to here and print that offer. And then last but not least is our seller finance offer. And as you can see, I've already put in 150 with 5,000 down, 4% interest rate. We're going to amortize this over 30 years. I just put in a 3-year. You can put in 5 years, what we actually did. Again, this is just giving us 5 years to make payments, and then whatever the balance owed after 5 years, we would then need to cash the seller out. You can put additional payments in here, the yearly property tax, insurance, and then kind of HOA fees to actually calculate exactly what your total monthly payment is. Again, that's going to be a wash when I do something with the new buyer, so I'm just eliminating that in this example. Down below, you'll see the actual payment schedule. So if I go down to the 60th month, if we actually seller finance this for the entire duration of 5 years, you can see my balance owed would be $131. If I turned around and seller financed it out, again, the buyer would then cash this out over 3 years. We would then see the balance of $137. So this whole schedule here is going to help you because obviously those of you that have a mortgage on a property, say with Wells Fargo, Bank of America, somebody like that, they send you an interest statement every year. So again, you being the bank, you're going to have to do that as well with your new buyer. And again, the seller and you would need to do that as well and find out who's earning interest on this particular property. So we're going to go up, we're going to print these offers, and now what we've created are multiple solutions to obviously multiple problems out there. You now are giving the seller 3 ways on how you can buy their house, and it's really up to them on which way may be best for them. So really hope this helped, just understanding how we acquire things, and then how do we actually get rid of these properties. Went through a lot of different benefits, showed you a real life example with a property, gone into REI Pro here. The tools are here for you to use. It's not, we don't put a tool in here that just because to put a tool in here. It's really something you need to have to make it work. And, I wish I had this stuff years ago because it surely speeds up the process today. But take this, we're going to record this. It's going to be put in your education center as soon as we get everything together and uploaded. So you'll be back and able to review this as often as you like. So I know a lot of you guys during the day, really appreciate you guys being here. Really appreciate you guys being an REI Pro subscriber. It means a lot to us. And, we wish you the best. If there's anything we can do to help you grow in this business, don't hesitate to shoot us an email. Contact us at MyREIPro. We'll be happy to answer those questions. Everybody have a great day, wonderful week, and look forward to, we have a very special presentation coming up you guys are going to be blown away with. And so can't wait to release that. We will be posting that particular webinar on your dashboard. So keep an eye out for that, and take care and the best of luck, and get out there and make some money.